We have all been told that relationships end with a blow-up, a screaming match, a dramatic betrayal, or a definitive conversation where someone packs their bags and says, "I'm done." But if you look closely at real life, that is rarely how it happens. More often, people leave your life emotionally long before they ever leave it physically. It is a slow, quiet, agonizing fade. Think about the last few weeks or months. It starts with a shift so subtle that you can't even put it into words. The texts feel slightly different, maybe a missing emoji, a longer delay between replies, or a drop in enthusiasm. The conversations feel transactional, like you are checking items off a grocery list instead of sharing your inner worlds. The energy in the room shifts. You keep telling yourself that everything is fine. You tell yourself they are just stressed at work, dealing with family drama, or simply tired. Your mind goes into overdrive, creating elaborate excuses to explain away what your heart already knows. This is the psychological trap of the silent exit. Because there is no official ending, you spend months holding on to a ghost. You are deeply invested in a version of the relationship that currently only exists in your memories. You try to love harder, compromise more, and walk on eggshells just to keep the peace, completely unaware that the other person has already checked out. Today, we are stripping away the confusion. We are going to look at the 3 definitive psychological signs that someone no longer wants you in their life. This isn't about panicking or pointing fingers. It's about giving you total clarity. When you understand these signs, you stop blaming yourself for a sudden shift you didn't cause. You stop chasing people who are actively pulling away, and you finally regain your power. The very first sign that someone wants out of your life is that your feelings transform from a priority into an inconvenience. In psychology, one of the core pillars of any healthy connection, whether it's a romance, a close friendship, or a family bond, is mutual emotional responsiveness. When someone genuinely values your presence, your emotional well-being matters to them naturally without it ever feeling like a chore. If they say something that hurts you, they feel a pang of discomfort too and want to fix it because the idea of breaking that bond genuinely bothers them. But when a person decides, consciously or subconsciously, that they no longer want you in their world, their empathy dial gets turned down to 0, and bringing up your feelings is met with a wall of indifference or irritation. If you try to bring up the distance with something vulnerable like, "Hey, I've felt a bit disconnected from you lately and it's making me a little anxious," a healthy relationship sees that as an invitation to connect. But someone who is checking out will weaponize that vulnerability and turn it back on you by telling you that you are completely overthinking, being way too needy, or bringing unwanted drama. Suddenly, you find yourself apologizing for being hurt, which causes deep psychological damage because you internalize their indifference and start believing that you are the problem or that you're asking for too much attention, communication, or clarity. Wanting basic emotional safety from someone who claims to care about you is never asking for too much, and while a healthy connection makes you feel secure, a fading one leaves you feeling crazy. What makes this phase so incredibly confusing is that they might still be physically there, replying to messages hours later and showing up to hang out occasionally, which causes you to ignore the fact that they are emotionally vacant. You spend hours replaying conversations in your head trying to decode mixed signals like a detective solving a crime, but if you have to dissect a text message like a legal document just to figure out if someone still cares about you, the connection is already broken. People always protect what they genuinely value, so if they show 0 concern for your peace of mind, you need to stop listening to their words and start looking at the pattern. The second undeniable sign is a complete collapse of effort, breaking the hidden law of physics that every relationship requires equal energy from both sides to stay alive over time. Feelings might spark the initial connection, but consistent, active effort is the fuel that keeps it running, and when someone quietly withdraws, they stop supplying that fuel. At first, the changes are tiny, vibrant paragraphs turn into one-word answers. Inside jokes stop, and plans get canceled at the last minute with vague excuses like, "something came up." Eventually, the dynamic shifts into a complete asymmetry where you become the sole operator of the relationship, always sending the first text in the morning, checking in on their week, proposing plans, adjusting your schedule, and driving across town to make things happen. If you step back and look at the scoreboard, you realize that without your constant, exhausting effort, the entire relationship would fall flat on its face because you are carrying 100% of the emotional weight while they simply sit back and casually consume your investment. We try to rationalize this behavior because the truth hurts too much, telling ourselves they are just swamped with their career or going through an intense phase. But there is a distinct difference between someone who is genuinely busy and someone who has stopped investing. A busy person who loves you will still find 3 seconds in a day to send a text saying their week is chaotic, but they are thinking of you, actively looking for windows to maintain the bridge. A person who is withdrawing will use busyness as a shield to hide their lack of interest, meaning they have plenty of time to scroll social media, hang out with others, or post updates, but suddenly run out of hours in the day when it comes to you. The most painful realization you can have, but the one that will ultimately save you, is testing the silence to see if they would notice your absence, or if the relationship would just quietly dissolve into thin air. If a connection completely vanishes the moment you stop chasing it, you weren't actually in a relationship. You were just managing a one-sided attachment. The third sign is perhaps the most profound, and it requires you to look at the horizon. They completely stop including you in their future. The future is the ultimate psychological truth teller. It is where human beings instinctively project the things, goals, and people they deeply intend to keep in their lives. When someone values you, you don't have to fight to be in their future plans. Your presence is automatically built into the blueprint of their mind. When they think about an event 3 months from now, a holiday next season, or a career move next year, they naturally think of you alongside them. Pay close attention to the linguistic shifts in your conversations. When a relationship is healthy and mutual, the vocabulary is dominated by collaborative words. We should try that restaurant next month. Our next trip should be here. Or, let's make sure we do this before the year ends. But when someone begins to emotionally detach, their language undergoes a subtle but drastic transformation. The word we slowly reverts back to I. The word our becomes my. If you bring up a concert happening in a few months, notice how they respond. Do they say, awesome, let's get tickets? Or do they hesitate, offer a non-committal answer, and say, we'll see, that's a long way off. I don't know what my schedule looks like then. They start speaking about the future in vague, abstract terms. They stop making solid commitments. They intentionally keep their calendar clear of you. Why? Because deep down, their mind has already moved on, and they don't want to lock themselves into obligations with someone they plan to phase out. They are quietly building a reality around you instead of with you. What makes this sign so incredibly tragic is that most people don't notice it until it is far too late. They are so focused on the fact that the person still hangs out with them today that they completely fail to notice they have been entirely erased from tomorrow. They mistake current compliance for future commitment. But a relationship cannot grow if it is living strictly on life support in the present tense. If someone is hesitant to plan next month with you, it is because they have already envisioned a next year without you. When these 3 signs manifest, most people make a devastating psychological mistake. They try to negotiate their worth. They think, if I can just be more understanding, if I can give them more space, if I can do something unforgettable, they will see my value and come back. This is an illusion. Love, respect, and mutual connection can never be bargained for. You cannot earn someone's appreciation through your own suffering. When you find yourself constantly overcompensating for their lack of interest, you enter a toxic cycle of self-abandonment. You begin lowering your standards, ignoring your own boundaries, and accepting breadcrumbs of attention just to keep a dying connection on life support. You find yourself grieving a ghost. You aren't actually fighting for the person standing in front of you today, because the person in front of you today is cold, distant, and indifferent. You are fighting for the memory of who they used to be 6 months ago. You are fighting for the beautiful future you imagined together. But you have to look at the reality of what is, not the potential of what was. One person can initiate a connection, but one person can never sustain it. When you try to hold on to someone who has already let go emotionally, you aren't proving your loyalty. You are just participating in your own heartbreak. Let's clarify one crucial detail. Relationships go through rough patches. People face burnout, mental health struggles, and intense life pressures that cause temporary emotional distance. But there is a massive difference between a temporary rough patch and a permanent emotional withdrawal. In a rough patch, the foundation of care is still visible. Both people are stressed, but they still actively try to minimize the damage to the connection. They communicate about their distance. In an emotional withdrawal, the distance is comfortable for them. They don't mind leaving you in uncertainty because your peace of mind is no longer their concern. The moment you stop chasing someone who is walking away is the exact moment you get your power back. It hurts to accept the truth, but clarity is always better than the slow torture of constant confusion. Your value as a human being does not decrease simply because someone else lost the capacity to see it. An art collector doesn't look at a masterpiece and call it worthless just because they can't afford it or don't understand the style. Stop trying to force a square peg into a round hole and stop begging for a seat at a table where you are merely tolerated instead of celebrated. When someone shows you through their lack of care, their lack of effort, and their exclusion of you from their future that they want out, let them go. Walk away with your dignity intact. Step back not out of anger, bitterness, or a desire to play mind games, but out of absolute self-respect. The right people will never make you feel like you are too difficult to love simply because you asked for the bare minimum. Before we close this out today, I want you to take a deep breath and really think about what we just discussed. Look at the patterns in your life with clear, unclouded eyes. Which of these 3 signs resonated the most with what you are experiencing right now? Is it the lack of empathy, the one-sided effort, or being left out of the future? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. This community is a safe space for all of us to learn and grow together. If this deep dive brought you the clarity you needed today, do yourself a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We break down human behavior, emotional intelligence, and relationship psychology every single week, and our next video might just hold the exact key you need to unlock your next phase of personal growth. Thank you for watching, respect your journey, and I'll see you next time.